Hi there, this is Austin, and I have a tutorial for you today on how to use the save effect in Dulst. And we're going to use that to create a little sample game mode that allows progress between matches. So, in Dulst, there's a built-in effect, which we can see right here. So, save player data. This needs other things to work for it, but basically it allows you to save properties and values between matches. It is the only way to do so, besides achievements, of course, that kind of allows for a sort of progression or any sort of tracking of what you did in one match to have an effect on another match. And like I said, we're going to use that to do a very basic sort of staged story mode where in order to get to the next phase of the story, you need to beat the previous one. Upon beating it, you will change what the game mode actually does. So, just a quick warning about using the save effect. Currently, the way it's written, it wipes everything every time you save. Every time save is done, it kind of overwrites all variables in the game. What this means effectively is that unless you are constantly accounting for all variables, you will lose things that you are not constantly setting. So in practice, what I'd recommend, until you get the hang of it, probably don't have more than one game mode or effect or something using the save data. Because like I said, if you're using the default thing, then you have to account for every single mode or card that is using the save data, and that can get, a little crazy. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in. There are 3 things you need for this project. The simplest of which is we'll need some story mode decks. So we're going to go to miscellaneous card list. I have already created 3 story mode decks. You'll need however many you want. By default, I think I only have 3 rungs in this story mode, so you play the first boss. Once you beat them, you can go to the second boss. Once you beat them, you go to the third boss, and once you beat the third boss, it resets back to the first boss. So other than that, we only have 2 rule cards that need to be added, and they're relatively simple. And I will have links to these rule cards in the description, so that if you want to just copy them, you're free to. This will all work as long as you set it up. If you import these and you call your decks those 3 story mode things, this will work right out the box. But we'll go ahead and go over it just to see what it is it's doing. So we're going to start with the base game rule story win card that I've created. Because while this one is a bit more complex, it's the one that actually sets a lot of the variables that the other card uses. So this is the workhorse of the effect. This is the thing that's actually doing the saving. So how this card is set up, we have a new rule card called Story Win. We have it set to require game mode story. Oh, I forgot. 4th thing, I guess. You do have to create a game mode called story. Make sure it's capital S if you're using this template I'm giving you. So you need to set require game mode to story. This will basically allow it to only run during this game mode. But other than that, we are triggering on the win match condition for the player. So we verify that player 1 is the player that is the one winning. In all AI modes, player 1 is always the human player, player 2 is always the AI. So this is just a simple way to check. There's other ways you could do this, but there's other ways you can do this, but this is probably the simplest. So what are we doing? So we are going to be using a variable called story wins. That is going to be the one property we are passing back and forth, or not passing back and forth. That is the one variable we are storing. So we're only using one variable, and that's what everything is going to depend on. So what this is doing, we are assigning the owner the data.story_wins, and we're going to call it check. So what data story wins, if you come down here, story wins is the number of wins we currently have. So we create story wins, we save that. Anything that's saved post that game that it's saved shows up in the data subfolder, tree, whatever you want to call it. So during the game you're using, it's save.storywins, and that's basically, and everything with a save dot gets saved. And data dot is what we're pulling from. So we're going to pull the existing data story wins. So if you were in round 2, you've already won once, you would pull this and it would say, it would be a value of 1. So basically we're going to pull this number. First we're going to check if it's undefined. So basically if you've never played the story mode before, you're going to actually be undefined. You're not going to be at 0 or anything. So the first thing we're going to do is check for undefined. And remember, this only is going to trigger after they've already won. So they've already beat the first boss. So because of that, we actually have to do something a little different. We have to send them to round 2 functionally. So we've created this one rule. It checks if it is undefined, and if it's true, we're going to run to first one. So down here we have first one. And all this does is modify the player's property save.storywins. So remember, anything that's save dot is what we're actually saving in this round. So that's for the first one. If it's not undefined, we go to the next check. The next check checks if it is equal to or greater than 0. So this is sort of a just secondary check for this, just to make sure it catches anything that is unaccounted for. Basically, if anything fails this, it's going to go to new start. It's basically start you at 0 for fresh if somehow a number gets really screwed up or a variable gets wiped. This will help catch it, and it just basically verifies that you have at least 1 or 2 or 0 in your value. So this next check, we're going to see if it's less than 2. So the way we're doing it, when you win your first one, you start at 0. When you win the first round, you go to 1. When you win the second round, you go to 2. And when you win that second round, or when you win the third round, you should be at 2 when you trigger this card. So we're checking if we're less than 2. If we are, we're just going to add a win to our thing. So we're going to pull the variable down, and then we're just going to add 1 to it. Once we've added 1 to it, we modify our player property of save.storywins to that new value we've created, the new win, and we save. However, if this failed, and this is greater than 2, that means we've actually beaten the final boss. Because once we have 2 here, we've beaten 3 bosses. So we actually need to reset it back to 0 so that it doesn't keep just going forever. So on this one, we either continue or we go to new start. And here's our new start that's set to 0. Alright. And once it's set to 0, this is actually going to come back, set it to 0, and it's actually going to go back to save. So once you hit save, this basically runs everything in that save dot. Anything with a save dot basically gets written to data dot. And again, like I said, the problem with this is it does it for everything. If nothing exists, and it basically makes everything undefined. I'm not a big fan of that, but it is currently how it works. So this is how this card works. It's just a simple counter. It's just checking. It pulls in what the variable is from the previous game, checks what it is. If it's below the threshold, it adds 1 to it and then saves. And if it's above the threshold, it resets you and then saves. So that is the story win card. That's the more complex one. Like I said, again, I'll have links to these so you can just copy them if you want, play with them. I'm just trying to explain them a little bit. So the only other card we need is game mode, and we have the actual pre-play phase for the mode. So if we click on this, we see we've added game mode story so that it only runs in the required game mode story. And then it shows up under the game mode story section. So this works just like a basic pre-play phase card. So that's pretty standard. Your specific trigger when it's called, just on game initialization. Win. So we are going to pull data.story_wins. Again, we're going to check what the variable currently stored is. And this one's a lot simpler. We're going to check and see if that number is equal to 0. If it is, we load deck 1. If it's not equal to 0, we go to the next block. To this, we check if it's equal to 1. And if it is, we load that deck. And if it's not, we go to the next block. And here we check to see if it's equal to 2, which is the highest it can be. If it is, it loads the final deck. Now if it's not 2, that means it is undefined, in which case we send it to new start, which is the first bracket, the first deck. And then each of these you'll see has a UI set paragraph tag. This is just a little flavor thing. So you can set this. You can add a little paragraph text that kind of shows up before the thing and gives a little story, gives a little insight, however, what you're using this for. Just has a little flavor. It can be different for each round and kind of can progress the story. And then just whenever we're ready to go, we just make sure we trigger the finish effect, which triggers the pre-play phase completed and moves on. But that is all the actual work you have to do. This is now fully functional. I will show you how it works. So we go to play. We go to story mode, which I've already made. We click on it. As you see, we get the little pop-up that kind of explains the story. I've gone ahead and made some cards that can win the game easily just to show what's going on. So you see we're up against the first boss. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to speedrun this and kill him real quick. So we won. So we're out of here. Now we come back. See, we're still using the same story mode. We go here. Oh, we have new story. And we're facing off against the elephant. So we're going to go ahead and kill off the elephant. We won. Alright, and then we're going to go and we're going to hit it a third time. So we get the last part of the story. Come here. Oh, it's the lion boss. So we are going to kill it. It has been defeated. And now, when we go back to the story mode, because we hit the top, we're actually going to reset and we're going to be back against the bull. We're going to have the first story segment. And we're back against the bull. So basically we've run through the story mode. You can make this ladder as big as you want. The person I helped set up a basic function like this, I think did 6 or 7 story beats. They also played video and a few other things like that, but you can obviously do other things with this. You can have it so that once you beat certain bosses in there, or the final thing, you can give achievements, you can give extra points. You could use that to unlock another story mode, but like I said, just be careful using the save data in multiple modes, because if we were to say have a second story mode with a different story, once we won that one, it would basically wipe all the variables from this one unless we were constantly writing them in the new one. This was a bit more advanced than the previous tutorial, but this was a cool little thing. It seemed quick, and I do like doing some of the more advanced tutorials too. So I hope that helped. Also, if you like, you can check out my One Piece game, where I have a conquest mode that is using a lot of the save data save and data features to create a sort of dungeon run from Hearthstone, where you kind of go in, keep the same deck, and kind of add to it as the mode progresses and resettle on losing. So you can always go check that out, and if you want a little bit more complex version of this. But other than that, you can always chat with me if you have any questions. You can visit my game or come to Discord and chat, but elsewise, I hope you all enjoyed, and hopefully I'll have a tutorial for you soon.